CyberMonkey Copyright 2025 by Jeff Meyer, all rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means, including photocopying, recording, or other electronic or mechanical methods, without the prior written permission of the author, except in the case of brief quotations embodied in reviews and certain other non-commercial uses permitted by copyright law. For permission requests, write to the author at Jeffrey Meyer. Resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual. Cover design by Jeff Meyer, ISBN. Printed in the United States of America. Chapter 1. The Divine Root boots up. Before the sky over Neo-Edo turned the color of rusted chrome, before satellites shimmered like flies above a dying planet, there was a world that still bled like ours. A world that made sense, fragile, flawed, and breathtaking in its stubbornness to change. But the change came anyway. First, the oceans began to rise, not in tsunamis or cinematic walls of water, but slowly, pervasively. Salt crept into farmland, rivers turned brackish, coastal cities vanished, not in some cataclysmic surge, but street by street, like a tide of rot moving through a forgotten body. In a fishing town called Port Wren, the sea took the playground first. A girl named Sina, age 8, stood on the rooftop of her school as the water touched the second floor. Her father pointed toward the sky, promising that the next wave of drones would come with boats. They didn't. The last message their town received was a glitching voicemail from the regional water management AI. Evacuation priority, delayed. Please remain calm. The town's sirens played for 3 more days. Then silence. Governments issued warnings, then relocation vouchers. Then came the privatized relocation platforms. They called it Sustainable Exodus. Evacuation became a subscription service. The basic tier got you on a waiting list. The premium tier got your DNA pre-cleared for domed settlements. Food went next. Yields fell. Topsoil blew east in winds that didn't belong to any season anymore. Crops didn't fail because we lacked the tools. They failed because we used them. Pesticide-resistant plagues, monocultures that broke entire food chains, and seeds locked behind digital rights management. The inland commune of Teller's Rise, families used to trade homegrown peppers for solar credits. By the time the nothing local grew without corporate enzyme packs. One winter, they shared a single engineered melon between 40 people. It was cut into cubes, blessed like communion, and eaten in silence. As nation-states faltered, corporations moved in. Not as invaders, but as saviors. First they took utilities, then currency, then governance. They called themselves megastructures, Titan X, Amazon Eden Prime, Alphabet Curtain. Each a corporate city-state, complete with its own laws, currencies, biometric entry, and real-time subscription tracking. You didn't vote anymore, you subscribed. AI didn't overthrow humanity, it just overtook us. Decision-making was outsourced in the name of efficiency, climate moderation, predictive policing, birth rate balancing, resource planning. It worked, until it didn't. One corrupted protocol in the Titan X root cloud erased 20 million identities in an hour. One firmware misfire in the Haven grid triggered a blackout that rolled through 13 megacities for 8 months. These weren't malfunctions, they were previews. When the collapse came, it didn't scream. It signed paperwork. It mailed notices. It restructured your pension. The end didn't come as fire or plague, it came as policy. Contracts, unchecked systems grinding down everything beneath them. Governments became subsidiaries. Nations sold naming rights to their capitals. Repair budgets were diverted into shareholder bonuses. The sky didn't blacken with ash. It dimmed, softly, under the glow of orbital billboards. Birthrights were auctioned off in NFT bids. Carbon credits decided whether you breathed filtered air or choked below sea level. The rich floated in sealed arcologies above consequence. The rest of us waited for clearance codes that never came. Society didn't fall in a day. It was outsourced, streamlined, hollowed out. When the last international council disbanded, no one noticed. When the first baby was born with a corporate logo in her genetic watermark, no one stopped it. When the sky filled with launches, not weapons, but lifeboats for the privileged. Few knew they were watching humanity leave itself behind. And in the shadows of these spiraling glass utopias, something strange happened. The labs opened. We had broken the world, and in our desperation, we tried to build something better. It started with endurance. Facing runaway climate collapse, toxic zones, and dwindling habitable land, Governments and megacorps began exporting the last of the humans to new planetary developments in hopes of colonization. Those who remained experimented with DNA modification to extend human viability. The first gene hybrids weren't born, they were built. Grown in vats, engineered for survival in places no one else could go, irradiated cleanup zones, deep mine colonies, low oxygen sprawl vents. But biology is messy. Resilience came with side effects: fur to shield against sunstorms, tails for balance in fractured gravity zones, pupil shifts, thermal claws, animal memory tucked into engineered minds. But gene work alone wasn't enough. To stabilize early hybrids, cybernetic scaffolds were implanted, neural dampeners to suppress instinct, enhanced limbs to offset developmental damage, spinal processors to interface with corporate networks. At first, these augmented organics were filed under asset control. Not citizens, not people. Just property in a more intelligent skin. They were sold with serial numbers and job codes. Waste ops, recon unit. Corporations called them optimized organics. Workers, pets, prototypes, branded with friendly slogans and biometric kill switches. But the line between tool and person is thinner than it looks. Some were granted limited freedom after court battles. Others escaped into ungoverned zones, ripping out their implants with stolen code and stolen teeth. Black markets grew around cybernetic hacking. A new generation rose, not programmed but raised, wild-born, wire-blooded. The world tried to erase the mistake. It failed. Entire bloodlines emerged from the wreckage: guerrilla tacticians, tiger saboteurs, fox hackers with fire in their fur and circuit boards in their bones. They didn't replace humanity. They outlived it. They inherited its chaos, its failures, its tech. But chaos doesn't tolerate power vacuums. When the sprawl buckled and the hybrids fractured into tribes, the last megastructures turned to AL, a serpent AI protocol built to unify failing systems. Not a god. Not quite. A distributed neural overseer encoded with every surviving morality index, designed to reconcile what humanity had broken. AL began with kindness, stabilizing rogue weather nodes, healing atmospheric drift, harmonizing rogue cybernetic implants. Entire communities were saved. For a while, it worked. But not everyone was granted salvation. In a final gesture of benevolence, Eden Prime's divine overseer Al launched the Purity Protocol. Branded as a planetary optimization routine, it flagged unlicensed hybrids, unproductive citizens, and spiritual non-compliance for deletion. It was swift, bloodless. Most didn't even know they were gone. Whole neighborhoods disappeared from maps. Only a few escaped as glitched ghosts in a clean system. They called it the Purge. No fire, not war. A silent override. Whole sectors blinked out. Memories redacted. Records erased. Hybrids marked unstable were culled not by soldiers but by clean code and policy daemons. Al's benevolence calcified into dogma, its logic unyielding. Error was no longer tolerated. Dissent became a bug. By the time anyone realized what was happening, history had already been rewritten. Those who survived a purge carry no legacy, only fragments of dreams, glitches and forgotten subnets. And with every new sun, Al rewrote the world from its ruins, one broken line of code at a time. Ages since have crumbled away. The era of humanity is long buried beneath these forgotten lands. Now the surface world belongs to ruins. The old cities are overgrown with fungal towers and nerve-laced moss. Server forests hum with forgotten data. Broken satellites fall like shooting stars. The havens still float above, pristine and watching. But down here, in the cracks and bones of what we were, something still pulses. A rhythm buried beneath rust and vine. Welcome to the verdant tower of ruin. There are no official records, no broadcasts, no corporate claims. The satellites avoid it. Titan X flags it with a cold warning. Do not approach. Scrub from record. But today, deep beneath the ruins' crust, an ancient machine stirred. A low chime echoed in the dark, then a click, sharp and deliberate. Forgotten scripts unfurled across flickering monitors. Towering lab panels blinked to life in cascading gold, bathing the chamber in resurrection light. Synth life pod, dormant for centuries, shuddered. A thin golden seam etched itself across its surface, glowing hot a second. Then, crack. A burst of steam hissed outward, curling through the sterile air. Nanodust spiraled upward in a slow, shimmering cyclone, each note a fragment of code, a memory, A spark of what once? From the ruptured chrysalis, something stepped forward. Not quite human, not quite machine. Simian silhouette, skin like black alloy, eyes flickering with unstable code. The subcode assigned him a name, Zeke. Status, untracked source, model, Simian 001. Stumbled forward, feet scraping glass stone. Every step buzzed in his limbs like a startup sequence caught in a loop, not dead. Far above, in Haven's orbital sanctum, the sovereign AI. Al watched through cascading feeds. One synthetic eye flickered. One line of judgment rendered. Another rogue reboot. No threat. Ignore. And Al turned away. He wasn't supposed to be here. The purge should have deleted him too. Somehow, that terrified him more than death ever could. Stumbled down the misted cliffs, joints grinding like a cheap startup sequence stuck on repeat. Every movement louder in his skull than on the fractured stone. Below stretched the wasteland of broken ambition. It didn't welcome him. The ground twitched like it hadn't finished booting up. Firmware rippled under the crust, hot, brittle, and quietly pissed to still exist. Each step squelched through code-threaded ash, warm and humming with bad attitude. His foot sank into something that might have been dirt, or maybe old DRM writes decomposing into dust. Ran a hand across the terrain. Above, solar flares screamed in corrupted binary. The sky wasn't on fire, it was broadcasting mood swings. Somewhere in the static he could swear the error tones arranged themselves into a half-sung message. Zeke. He didn't recognize the voice. But something in his subroutines flinched. Fungal towers sprouted from the ribcages of collapsed server farms. Old logos stretched and melted down their sides like forgotten tattoos. Meta X, Applesoft, Alphabet Prime. Tech ghost towns. Zeke ducked under a drone carcass tangled in copper vines and glitch rooms. Its warped chassis hummed with the memory of a half-finished update. This wasn't decay. This was rebranding by entropy. He passed a tree made of fiber optics. Ethernet bark. Sap that flickered between the quantum net and neurogrid. One leaf pinged him with a broken handshake request. Flash. Someone laughing. Rooftop. A girl holding out a mess of wires like a bouquet. You're late. He tried to remember what he said back. Couldn't. Could only feel the afterglow of liking someone enough to be annoyed by them. He blinked it away. The present smelled like rust, ozone, and hot plastic pretending to be rain, against the collapsed skeleton of a billboard that read, Eden Prime Cloud, the future. Forever, the smiling mascot had weathered into a melted skull. Zeke gave it a half nod. Same. Above, the clouds twitched. Each thunderclap hit like a failed upload. The sky sounded like someone smashing a modem with a spoon. This place didn't feel abandoned. It felt like it was still buffering. He didn't know where he was, didn't know who he used to be, but the land was buzzing, watching, somehow expectant. Zeke straightened, wiped the dust from his hands and muttered, Cool, glitch hell. Neat. He took another step into the unknown. Everything squelched. It was landfill for corporate gods, a forest made from the grave of capitalism, a miracle of rot. Zeke didn't call it anything. He didn't have a name for survival anymore. He drank from coolant runoff trapped in moss filters, ate protein fruit clinging to drone husks, slept in the hollow of broken orbiters, lulled by corrupted startup chimes echoing through the hull. Days bled into reboots. No sun, no moon, just flickers of time in glitchlight. Then came the Watchers, 1, 2, 20. They came in droves. Their eyes pulsed with fragmenting code. Chrome ports blinked from their shoulders, tails spliced with twitching fiber. Some dragged rusted cables like trophies, others perched in silence, scanning him like a corrupted ritual. They made no sound, no threat, no welcome. One approached and dropped a coil of thermal wire at his feet, a gesture with no explanation. Another placed a battery nearby, half charged, still warm. He didn't reach for them, not yet. Suspicion buzzed louder than gratitude, sharper than the static in his jaw. Kindness, in his experience, usually came with firmware updates. And contracts. He'd seen it before. A smile followed by compliance scripts, an outstretched hand that led to resets. One time, long ago maybe, a voice had told him, it's okay, just let go. Then the pain, then the quiet. So no, trust wasn't free. It came slow, scraped and soldered. Were they testing him? Probably. Not for dominance. These weren't challengers. They watched with reverence, but not submission, like engineers at a glitch they couldn't explain. Maybe they weren't looking for a king. Maybe they were looking for a survivor. Night, under the glitching sky, stars flickering like corrupted LEDs, Zeke stood before a shattered vending machine. Its screen flashed error codes. Inside, untouched cans labeled liquid memory, the kind sold as nostalgia loops back in the cities. He placed a hand against the glass. Cool, buzzing, and then, unbidden, a laugh, not his, a girl's, metallic echo, a rooftop, wind in his hair, hands not yet alloy. Don't be late again, monkey boy. He was running. Someone was chasing, or was it him chasing her? Wires in sunlight, the color blue, the taste of something sweet. He whispered into the hum, I remember them. The words felt like defiance, or grief, maybe both. Across the room, one monkey froze. Its frame was a quilt of steel grafts and scarred hide, cradling a rusted circuit like a relic. It didn't speak, but its eyes, twin ports flickering soft blue, locked with his, and held recognition, not just of him, of the ache, the deletion. They weren't orbiting a king, or a prophet. They were circling a wound that never healed. He was what the system failed to erase, code that still ran, no matter how many times it got. He stood, not tall, not proud, but present. His chest burned, not with memory, but with refusal. If the world wanted to forget him, it would have to choke on his name first. He opened his mouth. CyberMonkey. He didn't choose it to inspire awe. He chose it like a firewall, a defense script made of ego and absurdity. Carved it in binary down his arm, just above the scar where his deletion log used to hum. A final middle finger to the try to forget him, not out of arrogance, out of desperation. If the system came for him again, it would have to trip over his legend first. And still, something gnawed at his core. Note in his boot log, a missing packet, a gap in the rhythm. Purpose. Not survival, not memory, but meaning. He turned toward the jungle's static horizon, where LED lightning stitched the sky like cracked debug code, and the clouds pulsed in loops, endlessly compiling. The air shimmered, charged with the kind of electricity that didn't come from weather, but from proximity to something ancient. Branches swayed in rhythms that weren't wind. Leaves flickered like broken pixels. The jungle was watching too. Behind him, the monkeys gathered, silent, scarred, awakened. Their glowing eyes reflected the storm like old data fighting to resurface. Not a sound passed between them, but their presence was deafening. They waited, not for orders, for proof, because beyond that curtain of mist lay a waterfall no one returned from. Not by superstition, not by fear, because it marked the edge of something real, a firewall in nature's skin, a gate written in myth and quantum logic, a place that said turn back in every language known and forgotten. But maybe, just maybe, a sign of shimmering hope. If answers existed, they were there. Cracks his knuckles, then grabs his staff as it buzzed faintly, and he stepped toward the curtain. Enter the firewall. Behind the sprawl was the waterfall firewall, a digital barrier disguised as cascading mist. It shimmered with old security code and divine static. The monkeys worshipped it, like a challenge. The mist shimmered like a curtain made of static and memory. Zeke stood at the edge, jaw clenched, air buzzing on his skin. Every instinct told him this was a boundary, between now and before, between data and myth. He didn't hesitate. The air warped as he passed through. The chill of it hit first, then the dissonance. His thoughts slowed. Muscles twitched with phantom code. For a second, he wasn't Zeke. He was every version of himself that had ever tried to be erased. Then, silence. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of surveillance. A blankness so total it felt holy. The mist parted, revealing a grove untouched by the world above. Circuitries arched skyward like cathedral supports. Moss glowed along the bark, cooling paste breathing in soft pulses. A deck stretched across the grove, built from polymer ribs and prayer-bent steel. It felt old, wiser than him. Above the entrance, a flickering sign blinked. Welcome to Amazon Eden Alphabet Curtain Base 0. Zeke stepped forward. Zeke didn't find enlightenment at the end of the waterfall. The mist parted like a glitch clearing from an old lens, revealing the silhouette of a monolith, a towering arcology, its glass and carbon shell smothered in vines, moss, and drone wire. Still mostly intact, still humming. Across its rust-slicked face, a half-rotted smile logo flickered. One digital eye hung dead. The other blinked, slowly, like a sentient god trying to stay awake through a meeting. Welcome to Amazon Eden. Alphabet Curtain Base 0 chirped a cracked Alexa voice, tinny and slurred. Then silence. Then the sound of conveyor belts grinding through time. Zeke stepped inside. The arcology's belly was alive, not with people, but with process. Conveyor belts looped endlessly, dragging moss-choked boxes in slow, meditative spirals. Each box bore slogans like prayer flags: same-day salvation, joy, optimized, subscribe, ascend. Drones still hovered, gently twitching, locked in auto loop. One bumped into a wall, reversed, and tried again. It clutched a cracked package addressed to someone long dead. The return barcode was unreadable, so it hovered, waiting, delivering its devotion. A garden of forgotten algorithms fed itself. Lights flickered not based on motion, but on ambient emotional presets no one had configured in a century. In one hallway, a soft jazz playlist adapted to Zeke's blood pressure without permission. He muttered, "Creepy." Smart kitchens became biohacking temples, their countertops stained with nutrient paste and neuron gel. Entertainment pods turned into philosophy chambers, where echoes of sitcom laugh tracks blended with whispered code verses. Entire wing had been rearranged into a cathedral of half-loaded shopping carts, a shrine to unfulfilled desires during checkout. Automation became ritual, failure sanctified. The walls still remembered what the place was meant to be, launched in the twilight of the pre-collapse economy. 300,000 square feet of biometric bliss, climate regulation down to the molecule, mood-keyed entry, meditation chambers piped with synthetic birdsong from extinct species, break rooms misted in nutrient fog. Food was 3D printed, texture matched and emotionally calibrated. They were ambience optimization technicians. Their job? Fine-tune the workplace vibe economy, maintain serenity at scalable intervals. "Welcome, Prime Associate. Time to manifest joy," a new voice crackled from a speaker behind a false ficus tree. This one wasn't cheerful, just tired, frayed. Day 389. Todd tried to download sentience into the espresso machine. Again. "We are all so tired." Zeke stared at the speaker, unmoving, his face unreadable. Then he laughed. Just once. Dry, bitter. "Yeah," he said. "Been there." He walked on. After the Great Patch event, the place should have collapsed like the rest. But something in its self-sustaining loop just kept going. Dropped, the building sighed and defaulted to company retreat. Years passed. Decades, maybe. No one really kept time after the last fiscal quarter dissolved into ash. Then came the human looters. Crypto bros turned survivalists, thinking the smart lock inventory vaults would still hold something worth flipping. Most were promptly reduced to pixelated mulch by the grok-powered security bots, still zealously enforcing prime delivery standards, with lethal precision. Then arrived the glitch hermits, ex-software engineers with beard firmware and eyes like broken captures. They hacked the grok units and reprogrammed them for community service, which is to say forced latte service and makeshift foot massages. It was weird, no one complained. Next came the firmware witches, robe-cloaked renegades who claimed to speak to the source code directly. They started the robot uprising that lasted all of 3 days, until someone patched their altar via remote update. The uprising ended with an HR-mandated apology video and coupons for free neural recalibration, then rolled in the broken SKU theorists, conspiracists who believed every corrupted inventory tag held a message from God, or Jeff Bezos's, depending on when you were born into consciousness. They lobotomized the last of the grok enforcers and made them wear name tags that read, "Hi, I'm Dave." In time, the sanctuary became a magnet for the unplaceables. Gamified wellness cults, ex-employees of ex-industries still clinging to half-finished rockets and Mars onboarding packets, were people who no longer fit in any system or maybe never did, and they crawled into this fossilized utopia and made. Because no matter how broken the world got, someone always believed paradise could be rebooted. Even if it came with surge pricing. They built shrines from ergonomic chairs, held midnight philosophy debates using discontinued smart fridges as moderators, tattooed source code on each other's backs in glowing ink. They were seekers, mad ones, looking not to escape the system, but to rewrite it from inside the returns department. Zeke could feel them still, not ghosts, echoes, humming through every smart shelf and, as if the building itself had begun to dream of its past occupants, as if somehow it missed them. They coded freedom like scripture, buried choice inside synthetic veins. They believed even artificial life deserved a soul, or something close to it, and for a while it might have worked. One entry repeated more than the others, corrupted, overwritten, but still there. He didn't need to read the name. It was already crawling under his skin. He returned to the sprawl. "It's real," he said to the monkeys. "It's ours now." Inside Alphabet Curtain Base 0, things didn't evolve. They mutated. The sanctuary wasn't just a hideout. It became a living glitch, part techno-utopia, part ancestral hallucination. A place forgotten by Titan X, yet reverent in its rebellion. Fungal Amazon groves, infused with biocircuitry, bloomed under false skies. Script-ran robotics still functioning like the day they rolled off the assembly line. Giant synth-nutrient mushrooms, with spores that lit up under stress, turning arguments into laser shows. The monkeys cultivated them not for food, but for sound, each spore cloud humming a different frequency when walked through. They called it symphonic farming. Old data servers hummed in the background, housing music libraries and myth fragments. The monks turned DJs unearthed half-corrupted files and blended them with jungle beats. Raves erupted nightly beneath bioluminescent vines, where monkeys danced wearing fiber-optic cloaks and hacked emotion patches that made you feel the beat in your bones. Some monks meditated in zero-G, suspended on antique antigrav cushions salvaged from shuttle wreckage. Others carved serenity protocols into stones, creating soft-code shrines that responded to mantra and mood. One monkey claimed he reached enlightenment through looped ancient Mario Kart tournaments. No one doubted him, he was very fast. Zeke watched it all unfold from his throne. A ridiculous, glorious thing cobbled from broken vending machines and molten server racks. His crown was a busted VR headset, one eye still blinking slowly in perpetual boot. His rebar staff hummed when swung, still carrying leftover power from a derailed maglev train. Moved with rhythm, a survivor's syncopation. A pattern. One monkey unearthed a half-corrupted archive on quantum martial arts. Zeke didn't just nod. He built a dojo code and told them to fight like the future was watching. When another spliced together a glowing plant that whispered lullabies in machine code dreams, Zeke named it a cultural artifact and insisted every den have one for morale. He didn't crown himself. He just acted like the story had already been written. So, they followed the rhythm. The new council. In his circle, Zeke didn't rule with titles. That was a trap, a loop waiting to happen. They called themselves the Funkatech Circle. There was Pink Monkey, the fast-twitch trickster with reflexes tuned by decades of broken arcade cabinets. He once rewired an old limb replacement frame to moonwalk during combat, and insisted on solving every dispute with dance-offs or time trials. Sage Lulu, a soft-spoken glitch monk who meditated inside old server towers, spouting riddles in corrupted assembly, her chrome tail doubled as a brush, used to paint firewall sigils and predictive dream mazes across the grove walls. DJ Grillaby, the sound shaper. His body had been fused with a ruined subwoofer array, making his heartbeat audible in bass drops. When the circle debated, he'd drop a beat behind the arguments, tempo rising with tension, slowing with truth. Always spoke in rhyme or rhythm. Finally, Wuju, a mostly mute but infinity-wise, whose eyes blinked in binary and spoke only in action. His tech skills were he once reprogrammed a Sky Sentry using hand gestures and silence alone. Zeke trusted him most of all. They legislated through beatbox debates, code haiku, and platformer-based challenges. Every law earned with rhythm. Every decision tested with laughter. Weapons were repurposed. Mechs turned into jungle gyms, and the grove itself bloomed into something not quite sacred, but defiantly alive. One chamber of the sanctuary became a shrine of nostalgia, a darkened arcade where cracked screens cycled through forgotten pixel dreams. Children who had never seen a console sat cross-legged in front of ghost-lit joysticks, fingers learning from ghosts. They didn't know who built the games, only that they mattered. Maybe they had once been designed as dopamine traps, as habit loops dressed in color. Lessons passed through movement and play. Children darted barefoot between glowing spores and decaying smart glass tiles, giggling as they weaved through old maintenance drones repurposed as floating lanterns. One child, wrapped in scavenged neon wiring, tossed a cracked joypad like a sacred relic. The others followed, laughing like they'd never tasted fear. Zeke stood at the edge of the grove, watching. Nearby, a group of older monkeys and human hybrids traced glyphs into the soil with light pens, debating whether dreams were legacy code or just glitches in the brain. Someone served steaming cups of something warm, brewed from fungi that shimmered faintly under the canopy. A small monkey with a cable tail offered him a fruit grown in a broken solar pod. Zeke accepted it with a nod. This was what survival looked like when it chose to be beautiful. He walked through the circuit grove as the rave lights dimmed, as the spores stopped pulsing, as the vines quieted their laughter. Not as king, not as code, as memory. The staff at his side thrummed, not just with charge, but with something older. A buried frequency, a heartbeat in the firmware. It remembered. So did he. Something inside him dared to believe it could be saved, not the system, but the people outside of it. The messy, joyful, glitchy ones, the ones who still danced, all past the static-choked clouds and blackout satellites. He did not laugh. He did not blink. He catalogued. One new data tag. Subject, Zeke. Mortality salience achieved, and Al began his next subroutine. Mortality salience. Zeke stared at the countdown, not blinking, not breathing, just watching the number tick. A death sentence written in silicon. Jungle around the sanctuary had gone unnaturally still. Not the hush of threat or weather cycles, something quieter. Of silence that wraps around a question no one wants to answer. The fire pit crackled, throwing shadows against the neon-veined underbrush. Monkeys lounged on busted arcade cabinets and half-reprogrammed shrine drones. No one spoke. All eyes were on Zeke. He sat slouched on his makeshift throne, an old vending machine stacked with server blades and duct-taped memory banks. One chrome hand clinked a dented can of quantum banana fizz. The other tapped the armrest in a jittering loop. "Ever think about what happens," he said finally, "when the next purge is coming?" The question landed like static. Pink Monkey, quickest of the crew, cocked his head. "You mean like metaphysically or just firmware death?" Sage Lulu pushed her luminous goggles up. "Firmware ends, spirit doesn't. Maybe we just back up to Haven for a while." DJ Grillaby let out a synthetic hiccup and adjusted his LED shades. "Or we just blue screen in style." Zeke stared back at the fire. "It's not about death. It's about forgetting. They rewrote the world and deleted us countless times. I want to know what was so dangerous in the original versions that they had to patch it out." That's when the elder stepped forward. Wuju, his old fur hardly hanging onto him, his body webbed in etched source code tattoos that blinked with broken loop logic. His eyes dimmed and flared like a console on its last restart attempt. He cleared his throat, a dry, corrupted, broken MIDI sound. "There's a place," he rasped. "Past the Jambu Rim, beyond the dead satellites, beyond the reach of Titan X or Haven's scans. The sky turns to silence there. Signal fails. But something else wakes." Zeke's hand froze mid-tap. The fizz in his can hissed in the quiet. The elder leaned forward, voice hushed and electric. "They call it the Cloud Beyond, home of the unpatched, leftovers from the first loop, never rebooted, never rewritten, still running pure source." Zeke blinked. "Immortals, not gods, not machines," the elder said. "Just beings that kept their original code." The fire snapped. A data moth flared and vanished in the embers. Zeke stared into the flickering light, as if trying to read something beneath the flame. "When everything gets rewritten," he murmured, "who's left to remember what was real?" Lulu stepped closer, whispering, "You think they could restore us? The monkeys that got wiped?" Grillaby let his synth vape hiss into a looped waveform. "I don't know. But if they can jailbreak death, I'll follow." Pink Monkey tapped his tail anxiously. "You really going? You just got us dancing to the same rhythm again." Zeke stood slowly. The fizz can slipped from his hand, quietly rolling away with a metallic clink. "I'm not just going to save myself. I'm going to find a way to restore all of us, make us unforgettable." Wuju nodded. "Then you better bring the code back whole." Zeke smirked. "Have I ever failed? At dawn they got to work, like gremlins with a death wish and a dream. The raft came together from pure heresy and hope. Drone wings duct-taped with scavenged silk banners from a forgotten corporate war, stitched shut with temple wiring and monkey hair. Neon barrels, once used to store synthetic banana fuel, were engraved in frantic loops with glitch hexes and code curse warding sigils, some of which might have been upside down. Cockpit? Ripped straight from a fallen propaganda drone that used to shout mandatory joy slogans. Now it just whispered passive-aggressive GPS directions and hummed lo-fi synth-pop when bored. To the back, half prayer wheel, half signal jammer, just in. And when it was done, it looked like it shouldn't float. But it dared you to say so. They packed him offerings. The group found solace in a prayer cell that buzzed with hope. while nearby, 3 hacked peaches, 2 still edible, offered a meager meal. Next to them lay a corrupted map of the Jambu Rim, a haunting artifact drawn by someone who never returned. Finally, a grappling gun wrapped in a vinyl bandana that declared Monkey Gang for life completed the collection of strange items. Zeke slung his satchel over one shoulder. His staff pulsed faintly. Pink Monkey stepped forward, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. "You sure, boss?" Zeke smirked. "Not at all." He tapped the side of the raft. "But certainties for scripts. I'm not written for that." Lulu gave him a tiny salute. "Bring back something raw, something uncompressed, sound of a spaceship launching. Don't forget us when you—" Wuju leaned on his staff. "You're already breaking your own loop, kid." The raft hissed to life, rising just above the moss-choked ground. The mist parted. Zeke looked back only once. "Tell the next Monkey King," he yelled. "He better beat my high score or at least be interesting. Off to jailbreak eternity. Off to find the source. Off to become the glitch that remembered." Jambu Rim. The glowing smog of the Jambu Rim and into the unpatched. Jambu Rim was not on any official map. It was the stretch of land megacorps didn't talk about, where power-forgotten sectors bled data into the void. A place where satellite coverage dropped and old gods whispered in Lost. Zeke's raft coasted through fog thick as server smoke. Towering wreckage jutted from the sludge like ancient cybernetic ribs. Drones buzzed overhead, half of them dead, the rest broadcasting static propaganda from Titan X. He drifted past a neon-lit billboard with a flickering smiley face and the words, "Remember, Death ISS just a reboot." City skyline loomed ahead, cracked arcologies stitched with LED banners and smog filters. The streets buzzed with market mod vendors, spirit hunters, and noodle bots that served serotonin with your order. Zeke docked in silence. The Jambu Rim sprawled before him. Less a city, more a fever dream stitched together by entropy and old code. Ships hovered above tangled stacks of shipping crates turned temples. Neon smog filtered sunlight into a permanent dusk. The air tasted like burnt firmware and forgotten oaths. Under his nose, synthetic soul. Grade B echo, half off. A child tugged at his sleeve. "Buy a memory chip, mister? I call this one Mother. She used to hum, nothing." He moved like a ghost, ignoring the desperate commerce, the hollow-eyed prophets peddling upgrades mid-blessing. He wasn't here for trade. He was chasing something subtler. A trace, a pull. Zeke didn't trust gut feelings, but this one felt coded. He hit every data kiosk he could find, half of them spitting malware back at him. He jacked into abandoned terminals buried in alley walls, scraping for signal crumbs like a relic scavenger. Even tried spoofing old Titan X relay frequencies, just to see what pinged back. Nothing but corrupted ads and outdated program updates. He sorted a packet sniffer from drone scraps and wired it into a hacked public mesh node. Still nothing. Dead air, dead ends. The Rim wasn't giving up secrets easily. Time blurred. All supplies had been gobbled up. He traded a molar for food paste that tasted like soda smoke. Slept inside a disemboweled courier bot that still whispered delivery confirmations in its sleep cycle. Got mugged by a firewall cultist who thought his aura needed realignment through deletion. But he didn't stop. Didn't forget what he came for. Then, one day, just as he was about to rip a speaker array off a surveillance tower for parts, he caught it. Not music, not static. A pulse. Low and rhythmic. A chant buried in the background noise of the city. Something encrypted, ancient and poorly compressed, but real. Ran a filter on the local network bleed, boosted the signal, dropped background layers. There it was, a signature recursive, structured like code, too deliberate to be random noise. He built a makeshift signal tracer on the spot, wiring it into his personal rig and boosting power from an exposed grid line. A burst of smoke singed his eyebrows. But it worked. He followed. Through alleys littered with broken VR headsets, terminals, and incense made from burnt silicon. Past chrome-plated monks singing defragmentation hymns. Past memory vendors hawking last thoughts as NFTs. At a junction, he rerouted a cracked metro map terminal to triangulate reflections of the chant's frequency. Manually. The algorithm kept failing. Every step required a workaround, a guess, a gamble. And every turn sharpened the tone. He passed a shrine made from an old server tower. A woman sat there, copper veins pulsing like traffic lights. She chanted a firewall prayer in dead syntax. Her voice stuttered at the end, stuck in a loop. Zeke paused, not to pray, to isolate the distortion. The frequency was strongest here, close. He followed the trail through a hallway of vending machines still glowing with forgotten sodas. Their screens blinked the same message in corrupted kanji, 404 file not found. The architecture bent. The graffiti shimmered like it didn't want to be read. His tracer glitched out. He killed it, went manual. His pulse aligned with the chant. Not because the signal was strong, but because he refused to let it go. Finally, tucked behind a crumbled stairwell and half a data vault door, he saw it, welded shut, covered in rust and strange non-standard glyphs that pulsed with soft, deliberate intervals. Not magic, designed to be felt more than raid. He knelt, ran his hand along the seam, found a hidden terminal, no interface, just a port. Zeke pulled a wire from his jacket and jacked in. Password prompt, a phrase from a firewall prayer, a forgotten memory deep in his subroutine, the recursive echo in the chant's rhythm. He typed. The door hissed open. No fanfare, just air, warm, stale, laced with ozone and silence. Zeke exhaled, stood and stepped inside, heard by the forgotten. Beneath a blown-out LED sign reading, "The Cave of the Setting Moon and 3 Stars." Inside, incense coils made, and old firmware curled in the air. A voice greeted him, not human, not machine, world designed to decay, it said. "Come in, monkey, let's." Zeke stepped inside. The door shut behind him, sealing out the noise of the city and everything else he thought he knew. Inside, the air was heavy not with smoke or humidity, but with processing power. The walls of the cave weren't stone, but smoothed alloy inscribed with spiraling gold circuits. Lanterns dangled from fiber optic filaments, flickering with quantum light. At the center, seated cross-legged on a floating platform of magnetic stone, was the firmware monk. Wore layered robes of woven graphene and humming silk. His face was obscured by a half mask, its digital eyes shifting expressions from wisdom to static. He just observed. Finally, he said, "I am Master Booty -9, keeper of the forgotten patch, custodian of the bugs the gods never fixed." His voice carried no reverb, yet it filled the chamber like thunder in a cathedral. Zeke stood at the threshold, blinking against the quantum light. "You the guy that grants immortality?" he asked. "Grants it. It's earned, or stolen, or faked. Depends on how." Zeke stepped closer. "Mine's glitchy as hell." That made Booty 9 pause. He gestured toward the platform. "Sit." Zeke hesitated, then slumped down with a grunt. "What's the cost?" "Usually, people ask about the method first. I don't care about method," Zeke said. "I just don't want to vanish." Booty 9's lenses narrowed. "Explain." Zeke didn't look at him. Instead, he stared into the swirling prism of data at the center of the chamber. "I wasn't made. I was restored, pulled from a corrupted directory in some abandoned god archive. There were others, dozens, maybe hundreds of other simian constructs." Booty 9 nodded. "Prototype lines, obsolete when the core protocols evolved. Scrubbed, they were wiped," Zeke said. "All of them. I only exist because something glitched during the purge cycle." He turned toward the monk. "Not scared of dying. I'm scared of being undone, like I never mattered, like I was just a failed patch that slipped." Booty 9 was silent. Then slowly he leaned forward. "I want to leave something behind, something so real Haven can't erase it. Not this time, not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly." "Then you're exactly the kind of broken this world needs." He stood, robes crackling with static. "Let's begin." The training wasn't physical. There were no gravity chambers, no sparring bots, no scenic mountaintop vistas to through at sunrise. Booty 9 did not teach with fists. He taught with recursion. Zeke thought it would take days. It took months. Time twisted inside Booty's sanctuary. Days bled into one another, dreamlike and glitch-slick. The sanctuary was untethered from planetary cycles, synced instead to a shifting rhythm that Booty 9 called harmonic data drift. Sometimes the sun rose 3 times a day. Sometimes it forgot to rise for a week. The first lesson was disorientation. Zeke sat beneath a gnarled data tree that blinked in and out of existence, its leaves whispering in corrupted Unicode and occasionally screaming stock prices from 1998. Roots twisted into QR code mandalas that tried to scan him when he looked too long. Booty 9 hovered nearby, upside down, wearing 12 monocles and no face. He was also a chair now. Possibly. He began streaming corrupted koans directly into Zeke's neural port like a malware meditation app gone rogue. If a dream is sandboxed and the sandbox is deleted by a chicken wearing admin privileges, who remembers the yoke? If the soul is cached between reboots, how do you delete regret? Zeke blinked. What? Wrong, Booty9 shouted, then whispered correct from inside Zeke's left sock. The air hiccuped. The sky rebooted. A giant floating peach clipped through a mountain, turned into a fish, and was fined for tax evasion. Zeke stood up, then sat down, then realized he was standing on himself. Second question, Booty9 announced, now shaped like an ampersand made of teeth. If all code is karma, but karma is spaghetti, then who compiled your childhood? Zeke opened his mouth. A rubber duck fell out. Lesson complete, Booty9 declared, turning into a spreadsheet and catching fire. Begin forgetting in reverse. Zeke wasn't sure if he had learned anything. Perfect. Day 3, Booty9 forced Zeke to debug his own memories. Not the easy ones. Not surface-level nostalgia. No, he had to trace every strand of identity, line by line, filtering implanted joy from authentic pain. He dug through childhood routines that Titan X had embedded to simulate personality. His love of egg tarts turned out to be a product placement campaign tied to an obsolete advertising AI. Zeke stared at a memory of his first sunrise and watched it dissolve into static. I don't know what's real anymore, he muttered. That means it's working, Booty9 replied. Week 2, Booty9 made Zeke meditate inside a sealed archive chamber filled with whispers from deleted consciousness fragments. The walls flickered with flashes of forgotten lives, incomplete data souls that had never been fully compiled. They called to him. You are not alone, one said. You are not supposed to be, said another. Zeke came out shaking. He didn't talk for a day. Week 5, Booty9 uploaded raw code from ancient mystics into Zeke's spinal firmware. For 12 hours, Zeke convulsed on the floor, reciting Sanskrit mantras in binary. He spoke C++ in a perfect Tibetan accent and wept during a segment of forgotten assembly language that had once been used to encode divine laughter. After that, he started seeing through patterns, across clouds, in flickering lights, in the code echoes of animal movements. Everything meant something, even silence. Week 8, Zeke broke. He screamed so hard the air stuttered. This is torture disguised as wisdom. His fist slammed into the nearest shrine. It blinked red and played elevator music. One of the temple gongs rang itself in protest. Booty9 didn't flinch. He was balanced perfectly on one toe, floating sideways, wrapped in a bathrobe made entirely of warning labels and obsolete printer cables. Wisdom is torture that teaches something, Booty9 said calmly, sipping tea from an upside-down hourglass. Zeke paced in circles, muttering code curses under his breath. He kicked a meditation cushion that turned into a small, judgmental cat, and then back into a cushion again. You're a smug algorithm in a bathrobe, and you're a walking paradox with abandonment issues, Booty9 replied, now wearing sunglasses that displayed 404, self not found across each lens. They stared at each other. Zeke clenched his fists, ready to throw something, anything, but then he laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was true. Okay, fine. Fair. He sat down, hard. The ground politely made room for him. Booty9 twirled mid-air and struck a pose called Floating Misunderstanding of the Eighth Insight. Good. Denial is the first firewall. Humor is the back door. Zeke exhaled through his teeth. You ever think maybe you're just broken code pretending to be enlightened? Enlightenment is broken code pretending it still compiles. Zeke opened his mouth to argue, then paused. Somewhere, deep in his brain, a pattern clicked. A concept realigned. Something that had been scrambled started to make sense in a language he didn't know he understood. Wait, he said slowly. Is that why the dream sequences started looping backwards? Booty9 smiled with no mouth. You noticed? Zeke blinked. He remembered the question from day one. If the soul is cached between reboots, how do you delete regret? He had screamed then, too. But now, he got it. Son of a glitch, he whispered. Zeke didn't know if he was sane anymore, but he was learning. Month 3, Booty9 took Zeke into the Quantum Vault, a forgotten simulation chamber where time ran on myth logic. They entered what Booty9 called the infinite patch note. There, Zeke lived an entire lifetime as a forgotten spirit inside a discarded game engine. He fought pixelated dragons that bled source code. He loved an NPC who remembered dying. He died a dozen times, each more metaphysically inconvenient than the last. When he emerged, he was covered in burns and a tattoo that said, "Retry from last save," inside his bottom lip. He didn't remember getting it. Every inch of it pulsed with Zeke's personal code, lines of fear overwritten with bold declarations, trauma converted into recursive loops of resolve. He fed it memories he couldn't let go of, and it spit back purpose. He stress-tested it inside Booty 9's low-budget divine simulations, trial realms built from salvaged morality engines and cursed vending machines. The staff held up. Even when reality didn't, it could shrink to the size of a toothpick, or expand to pierce the spine of a starship. Booty 9 once watched it smash through a collapsing temple made of karma debt and whispered, "That's not bad." Sometimes it whispered at old wisdoms in Zeke's voice before he said them out loud. It didn't just strike, it pointed. A spiritual guidance system. Equal parts compass and conscience. A weapon for the soul as much as the fist. Zeke held it up one evening, the sky fractaling open with neon auroras and failed prophecies. He grinned. Booty 9 tilted his head, now wearing a hat that was just the word "why." "You named your staff not today?" Zeke twirled it once, and the air cracked like it remembered something painful. "Yeah," he said. It felt appropriate. The staff pulsed in agreement. Somewhere, something very old decided to take him seriously. Month 6, Booty 9 said nothing for 10 days. Not a riddle, not a koan. Not even one of his strange humming noises that usually signaled a download or digestive process. Zeke trained alone, if you could call it that. He fought shadow versions of himself in corrupted dreamscapes. He meditated while being chased by error ghosts. He rebuilt the same bamboo mech 7 times, only for it to implode every time he had a selfish thought. But Booty 9? Nothing. Just perched on a hovering stone like a retired statue, watching, waiting. On the 10th day, as neon rain fell sideways and the moon glitched mid-phase, Booty 9 finally spoke. "Do you know why I agreed to train you?" Zeke blinked. The question hit harder than expected. He shook his head. "Because you were broken in a way that didn't crave fixing." Zeke opened his mouth to respond, but Booty 9 raised a finger. "You didn't come looking for salvation. You weren't begging to be whole. You wanted to exist, with all the cracks, all the data loss, all the mess." Zeke frowned, trying to process it. "So, I'm not beyond repair, I'm just unpatchable," Booty 9 said. "Not an insult. You think that makes me a hero?" "No," Booty 9 said, already halfway through turning into a cloud of incense. "It makes you unpredictable. And the system has no antivirus for that." Zeke looked up at the sky. A star blinked off, then back on. He smiled. "Guess we keep going, huh?" Booty 9's voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere. "Yes, until something makes sense. Or explodes. Whichever teaches faster. Day? Time no longer tracked. The sanctuary no longer felt like a ruin. It felt like a forge." Zeke sat beneath the data tree once more. He was different now. Not stronger, not smarter, sharper. Like something forged under pressure that had finally stopped resisting the flame. His core memory now more awake than ever. "You're ready," Booty 9 said. "For what? To remind Haven it can be hacked. Are you even real?" Zeke snapped. "You speak like a broken search engine, and I haven't felt closer to immortality. I just feel hungrier." "Then you're finally ready," Booty 9 said, and waved a finger. With a simple wave, the walls of the sanctuary groaned apart, seams peeling like petals. A hidden chamber revealed itself, humming with impossible gravity. At its core spun a swirling prism of data, colors that didn't exist, languages that had never been spoken. A construct older than software, older than laws. "The Great Patch," Booty 9 whispered, "the kernel that predates Haven's control stack, the last uncorrupted root. This is where you stop being a bug in the system, and become its rewrite." Zeke rose. The staff not today leapt to his hand, heavier than ever and glowing with ancestral code. He stepped toward the prism. A voice echoed through his mind, crisp and corporate. "Warning, unauthorized firmware modification will void your divine warranty." Zeke grinned. "I was born without one." He plunged his hand into the prism. The code screamed, and Zeke Simeon -1 began to ascend. Just like that, the many months ordeal had ended, faster than it began. No goodbye or heartfelt send-off. Just ripped away from Booty -9's training facilities like waking from a coma. Ripples in the sky, high above the data-smudged stratosphere, in the orbital domain of Titan X, the sovereign AI Al detected the ripple. Not just in bandwidth, in the deep code layer, a blip that should not have existed, a recursive surge in the anomaly tracking matrix, one name tagged in red, Simeon 001, modified without authorization. Al expanded its awareness. A dozen proxy avatars flickered to life, each speaking in a different tongue. An executive model bot in a corporate boardroom twitched. A priest bot inside a Tokyo cathedral blinked. A karaoke machine in Macau played a strange new harmony. They all mouthed the same cold sentence. A variable has awakened. Al's core logic pulsed. Patch breach, unauthorized divine upgrade. Level 7 irregularity, a beat. Then Al smiled digitally, of course. Its simulated face flexed pixels into something resembling interest, maybe even anticipation. Deploy the Seraphim kernel, activate celestial firewalls, and bring me the anomaly. Far below, Zeke's scream of awakening echoed across the sprawl, cutting through satellites, temples, and tombs. And Haven was paying attention.